Welcome to Swag, some wisdom and gear from college admission leaders. Today we are joined by Claudia Marroquin from Bowdoin College. She's the Senior Vice President and Dean of Admission and Financial Aid. And Claudia, I want to start by giving you an opportunity to share your elevator pitch with an overview for students on, why they should consider Bowdoin.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. And Bowdoin is a small liberal arts college. We have about 1,800 students in residence, and we all are a fully residential campus in Brunswick, Maine. So I'm originally from California, and I know Maine can sometimes scare students, but I think the beauty of being in the location that we are is that students, when they get to Bowdoin, end up being not just part of the campus community, but the larger community as well, and really get to explore what Maine has to offer, which is a lot. And it's also a place that I think really supports students to take risks, both in their academic environment, but as young people. And the kind of historical piece that I'll share too is Bowdoin was founded in 1794, before the state of Maine was a state. So we've been around for a really long time, and what we do really well. And we were founded on this idea that students, when they come to college, and to Bowdoin in particular, are here not just to benefit from an education, but to really serve the common good. And this idea that how you approach your learning and the skills and talents you have should be used to really benefit the communities you choose to be a part of, however you define that. So I think our students really have the freedom to be themselves, to dive deeply academically, to enjoy the surrounding and enjoy what college has to offer, while also thinking about what's coming next, and to really think about how they're looking at their education, not just as a stepping stone, but to really try to affect change and to really be leaders in the global community.
That's great, thank you. And it really plays out in the admission process and really mission aligned.
Yes.
So now we're going to turn to the lightning round of questions, and we'll start with one unique program that's offered at Bowdoin.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and choosing just one is so difficult. So I'm going to cheat and mention two and then talk really about one. So the one that I'll mention is our Digital and Computational Studies department, which is now a major and a minor at Bowdoin. And it's something that started on our campus probably about 6 years ago. So hopefully you can dig in a little bit more and do some research. But the one that I really wanted to highlight is the fact that I mentioned Maine and how proud we are to be in the state. And I wanted to highlight our Environmental Studies department and program. It's really, if you choose to major in environmental studies, it's actually a coordinate major, which essentially means that you end up being a double major on our campus. You take advantage of the fact that you're at a liberal arts college and can really look at interdisciplinary learning. But for us, the study of the environment is not siloed. So the Environmental Studies department allows students to look at the study of the environment within the context and the lens of another department. So for students who might be really interested in science, and you're really interested in the effects of climate change and what's actually happening biologically, you could look at environmental studies and earth and oceanographic studies, ES and bio, ES and biochemistry. Or if you're perhaps really interested in how policies get enacted because of what you might be seeing happening in the environment, you could do ES in economics if you're really interested in the economic impact of rising sea temperatures. You could also look at ES in government. But the other thing, area why I highlighted the ES department is 15 minutes from our campus, we have our Coastal Studies Center, which is a research facility. So it's on an island where, if you're a part of the Environmental Studies department or any of the areas that really will do quite a bit of research, you have a facility that's devoted to that. But the other kind of unique part of that is we have something called the Marine Science Semester, where you don't have to be a declared environmental studies major, but you can opt to do all of your courses in a fall semester at the Coastal Studies Center. One of the modules in that semester is actually a comparative study of the environment. So you're doing all this research here in the Gulf of Maine, and students either end up going to Hawaii or the Gulf of Mexico to really, again, take what they've learned within context here in Maine and start applying it to a larger world. So that I would definitely highlight as our unique program, because it takes advantage of what we care about here in Maine, but it really, again, allows students to dictate how they're going to do their research, take their learning, and really start to expand that beyond Maine itself.
Sounds amazing. Sounds amazing.
If I could go back and be a Bowdoin student, which I am a graduate, I've probably explored environmental studies a little bit more, given everything that I now know about what they do.
Well, as a graduate, you can probably talk about the next question, and that's one fun tradition at Bowdoin. I take it that's a polar bear behind you.
It is.
I don't know if there's a tradition related, or what's one fun tradition?
So the polar bear is our mascot, and there are a couple of traditions related to the polar bear, especially the polar dip that happens in January. But the tradition that I really love, and it might not be qualified as fun, but I think it's a time-honored one. It really speaks to how students get introduced to the college, and then how they also bring in their families. So the academic year at Bowdoin starts with a lobster bake. Again, we're in Maine. The lobstering industry is a big part of how communities, especially in northern Maine and along the coast, subsist and live in the area. But bringing the entire campus community together around a meal, I think, is also really important. And we celebrate meals, the conversations that take place. So the night before classes start, there's this lobster bake that takes place at the athletic fields. There's also other options like steak and chicken and vegetarian and the whole works. But it's a moment for everyone on campus to come together, faculty, staff, students, for the start of the year. So you're guaranteed 4 lobster bakes, because these are happening every year at the start of the semester. But the night before graduation, there's also a lobster bake event so that you can bring in your family members to this event that we really believe, again, has brought our entire community together. So it ends up being these bookend experiences that, for me, I remember having my sisters at the lobster bake and being able to teach them how to eat the lobster. I had never eaten a lobster before getting to Maine. So it was this opportunity to be like, okay, now I've learned these things. It may seem so minuscule, but it has become just part of something that I enjoy being in Maine now. So I was able to share that with my family too.
That's cool. That's really cool. What's your favorite spot on campus?
I would have to say our visual arts center. I was an art history major at Bowdoin, and the second floor of the visual arts center, which is where in the bottom floor we have an auditorium. The second floor has the art history library, and many students dub it a fishbowl. So it's full of glass in the entry area, and it sits overlooking the quad, and directly across from the visual arts center is our campus chapel. We're not a religious institution, but it's a beautiful building. And I remember many nights and afternoons sitting reading in that fishbowl area, and just being able to see the quad and watching people walk across campus. And if it was a winter day and it was snowing, like literally you felt like you were in a snow globe. So I still have these fond memories of that, the seats outside of the art library. So that, I think, is definitely still my favorite place on campus.
That's really cool. So you have a really an important voice, I think, in college admission, and I would love to hear what you see as the greatest myth about admission.
Yeah, I tell students this all the time. I think, and I have this conversation with current students, where they think they're admitted to a college for one particular reason, that there's like this secret that you have to like break to demystify how to get into college. And it is a complex process, but I think the biggest myth is that you have to be this one thing, or that there's this one answer, and that once you crack that, you're golden. And I think it's much more complex than that. And the way that I talk to students about it is, you can truly be yourself, and the colleges that are going to admit you are recognizing you for you. And we're admitting complex classes. We have 500 seats in an incoming class. We're not expecting everyone to be the same kind of mold and to repeat each other, and that's the secret. We're looking for, again, a community, and that community is going to be made of individuals who love the arts, who are athletes, who are first generation of college students, who are coming from all across the world. And sometimes those identities overlap, But this idea that you have to be one thing or that you've been admitted for one reason only, I think that's the biggest myth that gives students this anxiety as if there's a correct answer to admissions. And it's more about recognizing that we have a community, we're building this puzzle and you're a piece of that puzzle. And there's a lot more that takes place than just one thing that has gotten you into college.
Well, and if there are no secrets in college admission, I imagine there are a number of truths. So what's one truth about college admission?
So I think the one that students forget, and I think this kind of platform allows you to see that it's a truth, like on the other end of the process are actual humans, are actual people who are reading your application. We've all gone through this process ourselves, and we have our own stories and our own identities. And I think the other piece that goes along with being a human is that it is a flawed process. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like it's not perfection. And I think there's some grace that we all have to give each other. But I think at the end of the day, for students to know, you have me as a dean of admissions who cares so much about students and has my own story that goes along. And I have my own imperfections. They're gonna be the students who I feel very much connected to, often because I might see myself in them. And even that, I can't always admit those students. I'm looking again at the larger picture, but I think just remember that this entire process, both on the student side and on the college admission side, we're all humans and there's ways of connecting with us.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, so as students think about that larger picture, what should they know about affordability and access?
Yeah, so I think I always take the access piece first. And I'm fortunate that I work at an institution that was test optional since 1969. That doesn't mean that there aren't more strides that we can be making. And I think for students to know that to apply to a college is only the first step. Affordability is part of access on whether you can actually say yes to the institution. But I think there are a number of barriers that I always look at to figure out, like, how can this process be a more level playing field so that students don't take themselves out before even submitting an application. So things like testing, yes, fees are very much barriers to students. And then there's all the things that happen once a student gets to campus. It's one thing for colleges on the admission side to provide access, but then if students can't actually participate fully in the life of the college, then we haven't met our goals and aren't really serving students. And that's where, again, affordability really comes into play.
Yeah, that's a really important point. Okay, last question. What is the best question a student should ask when they're on campus? And what is your answer for Bowdoin?
Yeah, so many questions that I can choose from. But there was actually an email that I received from a student recently after doing an online virtual event. So I'm going to say it's a campus visit. But the student asked a very pointed question about their own identity and their own experience on campus. And the piece that I can share is really, the student asked, I've read all of the materials. How do I actually take advantage of all of these resources and navigate a place like this to truly feel like I can belong here? And I think many students, when they're coming and visiting a campus and asking questions, you're gathering all of this information. And some of it, yes, you need to ask the question around, like, how does housing work? How do I get assigned a roommate? But all of those, I think, actually feed into this larger issue and the larger experience of, will you belong on this campus? And I think the other thing for a lot of students is to recognize that college is not going to be perfect. You're going to have your bumps throughout your 4 years here, or maybe 5 if you need to take time off to take a pause and deal with a family situation, a mental health situation, whatever it might be, is to recognize too that no college is going to be perfect and your experience won't be. So when those moments happen, how do you actually achieve belonging, and how do you reach out to some of these resources? Because you're making a commitment to a place, hopefully for 4 years. And you want to make sure that, yes, all of these pieces of majors, can you study abroad? Those fit into the larger piece of, will you truly feel like you can take advantage of those things because you actually belong at this place? So I think starting with that larger question and then listening to what the admissions officer will talk about or the student and the examples they give. If they're jumping right into like advising, great. But is that really what you were hoping to hear? And I think it allows you then to ask more pointed questions. And it, I think, just elevates the conversation that you've also done some research on your own and are digging in deeper to figure out if this could be the right place for you and become a home.
That's great. And get as many answers as possible.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's the wisdom. Thank you so much. And now it is time for the gear. So we are going to reach into our swag bag and see what you have for us.
I'm nervous. I forgot what I sent.
Let's see what we have here. We have some Bowdoin t-shirts. There it is. And another one in case you have twins. They can fight over who gets which color. And
I mean, the black and white, those are our colors, solid. You got to get the two options.
And then what do we have here? Is this in plastic?
So these are headphones. So Bowdoin branded headphones. Now that we're back on campus, many of our campus visitors are receiving these as takeaways. So I wanted students to actually have something that everyone is getting on campus. Because of COVID, we are using audio devices for all of our tours. The nice thing too is now we have these audio devices for when we have larger tours, everyone can hear. And if you have a hearing impairment, you don't have to raise your hand and ask for any special accommodation. It's just standard now. But all of our visitors are leaving with Bowdoin headphones because that's our little takeaway. We're not sanitizing them, we're just giving them away to students.
Great. That's great. Claudia, thank you so much for your wisdom and your gear. And we will see you next time on Swag from the College Guidance Network.
Thank you.